Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maverick Mindset Show. It's episode number 4. This is Angel Rebo with XPNsion Network, accelerating the consciousness of humanity every single day. I'm thrilled to be here with Gabrielle and Michael Spencer. Hi, Gabrielle and Michael. How are you?
We're great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm guessing you're somewhere else today because I don't see the same setup. What's going on at the Maverick Mindset Show today?
You're with us on vacation in my most favorite spot in Florida. So
look at that.
Look at that.
Okay, so with this jealousy and with this envy, we start with this very low level of consciousness, expressing those low levels of energy. Obviously, I'm kidding. Thank you very much for being here today. As I said before, this is episode number 4. Welcome to XPNsion Network again. And we're going to talk today about transitioning from mass consciousness to higher consciousness. My question is, obviously, we've been describing and we've been leading the audience through a path of becoming these Maverick Mindset people. Why is transitioning from a mass consciousness to a higher consciousness so important to get this Maverick Mindset?
Basically, we continually create our life experiences based on where our consciousness is. So if we are following the masses, right, which is what we've talked about, these lower frequencies of victim, shame, guilt, grief, depression, feeling abandoned, fear, all of these lower frequencies, what happens is, like a magnet, our energy draws to us more of the same, right? And how many people are saying, I don't want to be depressed. I want to find a companion. I want a better job. I want to stop being in survival mode. Well, survival mode is part of that mass consciousness, that lower energetic frequency. So we want to make the transition out of drawing to us the experiences that this low frequency creates, these emotions, and then the emotions translate to basically creating that in your whole life, everywhere, right? You're struggling all of the time. And we see this out in the world, right? It's being perpetuated everywhere. Basically anything to drag people down, because when you are in that emotional level of fear and worry, right? Being anxious and having the stress of trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills and take care of your family and feed them and all of those things, your energy is not high and it's not being spent on assisting the world to transition to a higher frequency as well, right? We're struggling to do it for ourselves. So the idea is to do the work we need to do to release ourselves from a lot of these cycles that play over and over, so we can see through the illusion of what is happening, to have full faith and trust within our own power within and our connection to God, knowing that the universe has our back.
So when you're also looking at this from a more practical 3D level, you are making better decisions. You're going to make longer term decisions in connection with either, the more higher dimensional aspects of your own subconscious, the way that you integrate knowledge and things like that. You're also going to be able to connect into greater levels of source or higher knowledge, greater mental streams through the morphogenic fields. You'll be able to make better decisions, and these decisions are more sustainable and more appropriate for where you want to go in life. Now, everybody focuses on the individual decisions, but what's even as equally, if not more important, is decisions as it relates to humanity. Are you making decisions? Are you going to create truly sustainable systems or beneficial systems that work in collaboration and cooperation as opposed to just competition? I mean, some competition is fine, but you also want to have a collaborative and cooperative environment. And when you're in higher states of consciousness or frequencies, this flow either from your subconscious mind or all the way up into a superconscious realm, or the realm of, the I am presence or something like that, however you identify that advanced state of being to be, is going to enable you to function through your life at a far better rate. And then, of course, it comes down to what's your end goal. If your end goal is to move into a greater reality, well, you cannot be in these mass consciousness levels. I mean, you may be able to dip your toe in them once in a while, but you have to reside in the higher frequencies of consciousness, higher states of willingness, acceptance, joy, higher reasoning, love, those type of things. Now it seems to be the opposite. We're in mass consciousness, dipping our toes into these higher frequencies, and look at some of the conditions in both our personal lives and in the world overall. So the goal is always to move into higher states of consciousness. Why? Because you're not just in a higher evolutionary process at any given time, but what you're really doing is you are making decisions of how your worldview and the world itself, your own personal world, is going to be interacting. It is a more advanced process.
Excellent. I love processes. I love because also, a process is something that people can follow. It's a guideline. There's some boundaries. There's things to do. Processes are people, are things that have to happen among these people, and there's things that have to happen. So I would love you, if that's okay with you guys, would you mind describing maybe a high level? What will be that process for that transitioning, and then maybe start throughout? What would be the steps to help people go through those different stages?
So when you're at a higher frequency, as Michael said, we all talk often about, I just want peace, love, and joy, right? And the abundance and prosperity of those things and what that brings to our lives, because the frequency of peace, love, and joy brings peace, love, and joy, right? From your interactions with your loved ones, with your friends and your coworkers, and life in general. And when, like Michael said, sometimes when things happen, you have a dip, but it doesn't last very long, and you're very easily able to bounce back and move through whatever is occurring versus it dragging you down and bogging you down for a long period of time. So when we talk about moving into, let's just say love, because love, believe it or not, is a level 500 frequency, right? And so that level is our first one on the scale, because joy is 540 on the frequency of consciousness scale, and peace is 600. So what this means is, right, we either have to have an amazing experience to hit that really high. And a lot of people have, felt that, accomplishment makes you feel that. Your wedding day, you're traveling on vacation. I mean, you get to have snippets of those feelings. So how do we make them last all of the time? And so the process to get to these levels, because they're much higher than mass consciousness. Mass consciousness ends at about 200 on the frequency scale. So one of our biggest roadblocks, and that we have to clear the energy that perpetuates it, is anger, ego, and pride. And those are at the top of the scale on mass consciousness. It doesn't seem like they would be, right? Because they're kind of big, and they sort of rule and influence so much of what we experience in our lower, at these lower frequency levels. So the way to move through them is using quantum energy healing. It is where we are connecting you to your highest self for guidance. So for a lot of people, they know Akashic records. They hear it all the time. Well, Akashic records, blah, blah, blah. What do I know about my past lives? Well, and this is something Michael and I have been talking about all week. It is that we know that past, present, future. We've talked about it forever, right? Past, present, future. However, it's not really past, present, future. It's all happening at once, which is really hard for our 3D minds to comprehend and to really understand how that works. But when we're working in quantum healing, we're not worrying about past, present, or future. We're worried, or we're putting our energy into asking your highest self to show what needs to be healed. It's like, I always think of it like Jenga blocks. So we're looking for the root cause of what has created your cycles of experiences and what it is that you need to heal, release, let go of, etc., in order to then be free of the cycle and move your frequency up the board.
Okay, so when you talk about process itself, we discussed a little bit about this before. We talked about the most baseline of mass consciousness frequencies: victimhood at 0, shame and guilt at 20 and 30, apathy and depression at 50, grief at 75, and then fear at like 100. These are the really low. These are what we refer to as the controlling frequencies. Fear is always the prime element that you will see, governments and other organizations use in order to subjugate a population, or the dark side, how it always uses fear, or now using apathy more than any kind of previous timeline that we've been recently exposed to. So when you're in these states, the first thing is you need to be aware of them. Okay, you need to be aware of how these are occurring. And that goes back to what we talked about before, mindfulness. You need to be walking in a present moment. You have to understand too that these things are not necessarily coming from, quote, dark forces. Where they also come from is they can come from your own subconscious mind. They can come from natural environmental conditions that will trigger some mental process that you've already experienced that is seeded as a kind of a mental construct of unproductive nature that will then trigger an emotional content. So you've got to be mindful of all of these processes. It's not always some external type of entity coming from a higher dimensional reality that's going to come in and come after you, or come after somebody, or go after somebody else to come after you. It could be your own biases and your own predetermined belief systems that you have carried for a long, long period of time, or old contracts, old things like that. You've got to be aware of these, and you've got to start slowly working, like Gabrielle mentioned, on the healing components necessary to eradicate those at a base level. Then you've also got to be very aware of when you're walking through your day that you're not stepping into these traps on a constant basis. You're not opening yourself up to this. When you start to feel yourself angry, you're not setting about the conditions for the more higher level of mass consciousness things like anger. Okay, fear will trigger anger many times, or grief and depression will trigger anger. And now you're going through these self-replicating looping cycles, these negative reinforcing cycles. And again, it becomes more and more difficult to get out of these. Once this happens, once you see this, then you have to use detachment. You pull away. You look at the environment that you're in. You look at what it is, and you analyze it objectively. You don't sit there and make rational excuses for yourself. Okay, rationalization is the realm of, dark forces and things like that. They can rational anything into your existence. But what you do is you look at it objectively and you say, okay, I can see where the negativity is forming, whether it's in my mind, whether it's in my emotional body, whether it's in some external source, and I begin to cut that off. Replace that with positive thought processes and emotions, or golden light, or anything that you can identify with, love, pure detachment and acceptance of the situation. However it is, you have to set about some kind of a mechanism. And Gabrielle, when we work with people, we work on these type of mechanisms, how to get these stabilized for the people so they become habitual. Then after that, you have to realize that there's another set of processes that kind of end with fear and move into the more higher states of mass consciousness. And these deal with desire. This is your ability to want to be like, keeping up with the Joneses, to have, the Buddha talked about the desire being, this constant source of suffering, our ability to desire everything in our reality. Okay. That can then trigger anger again, because you're not meeting the desires that you want. And this then also begins to fuel into ego and pride. And ego and pride are the most deceptive ones, because we all want
Allow me to back up a little bit, because I think that we've basically covering right now two parts of the same process, right? So Gabrielle mentioned quantum healing. You're mentioning different steps, like becoming aware, trying to bring your consciousness to more, let's say, joyful, higher levels of consciousness. But let's back up a little bit, because the title of the show is, and the theme is, transitioning from mass consciousness to higher consciousness. And actually, you just made a comment about mass consciousness. So could you please explain any of the two? Why is mass consciousness attached or related to or tied to lower levels of consciousness? Why?
because that's where the controlling elements for this reality want humanity to be. Humanity, when they're in their mass lower states of consciousness, are not in a position to become self-aware, to reach these more higher states of sort of, what's the term, God realization or source realization, where you are in a more higher perspective, able to make greater decisions that benefit you and others. Where you're at is you're in a controlling mechanism where you essentially are the instrument that others can use to keep everybody else into mass consciousness as well.
You're basically being controlled by your emotions. So emotions are such a big part of being a human. And it's something that all of us have, right? And we have various triggers of our emotions. And the way that this program for humanity is set up is to trigger you. And many things happen in our lives to trigger us, right? And those emotions then come up and they sort of take over your life. It's all you can think about. It's, you're losing sleep over it, which then causes you other problems. You get short with your family and your relationships and whatever, and you're not attentive to anything else. Our emotions are easily controlled at these lower frequencies. As we cross over into higher frequency, your emotions are not running amok anymore. You're just not triggered. And it's not because you're not trying. Okay. So for a long time, when I first started receiving healing, I was about 27 years old. And I will never forget being told, Gabrielle, you have to be less rigid and less logical. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that. I'm trying. And my healer would say, okay, quit trying. That's like trying to have a glass in your hand or something. That just doesn't work. It's not about trying. It's about being. And at the time, these were like foreign words. I totally did not get it. And it used to really piss me off, actually, because I'd be like, just tell me how. If you would just tell me how, I will do it. And she's like, no, that's not how it works. It has to come from within you. So for a logical thinking person, that was really, really difficult. But eventually, and I will tell you, it was not overnight for sure, I finally understood, but that was only because the healing work was to release all of the things that were pent up inside me. So people who may not seem emotional, it's not because they're not emotional, it's because they have them locked down. And that takes, special kind of healing in order to help them let it go, right? And so the people who are overly emotive, they're easily triggered as well, but they also need to get to the root of why they're overly emotive, right? Otherwise, these same things still drag you down no matter how you express it, right? Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And before we continue, I know, Michael, that you want to continue elaborating on that idea. But before we continue, as you know, we always try to prioritize what the audience says. And we have, someone in the audience that actually asked a question, which we love, because, at the end of the day, our audience wants to find solutions to the everyday problems. And we love that. And we are here to help them. And we are here to help you, Angela, in this case. So this is Angela's question. And I would like to allow it so that you can help her, whoever wants to answer first. So Angela is saying, how do you deal with tyrants who send threatening letters from their lawyer to close our road down and food care clients to my little business and bully me at the farmer's market? That's Angela's question. And she has a follow-up comment saying, I'm not a victim to their threats, etc., but I'm not going to lay down and let them walk all over me. That's her question. Would you mind, taking a shot for that?
Good for you, Angela, and nor should you. The issue here is not so much whether you're going to be able to eradicate all tyrants or, the bullies or people that are going to create destabilizing events in your life. You're not. This world is designed to challenge us. Even if there was no, dark controlling element that we've talked about in place in such a significant level, the very fact that it is a duality nature is going to present challenges for us so that we can overcome them. So we grow with that process. Now, what this can do is make the effect of these events less impactful. It's like water off the duck's back. And when you reach higher states of consciousness, the answers begin to come to you in a much more productive way. This could be something telling you that, maybe where I am located is not the ideal position. I mean, I'm just using an example here. This could be something where it's time now to begin to shift my focus, or I'm going to have to hire an attorney and do a constant series of, retaliations and other lawsuits to counter this. So in that process, that move may open you up to an entire new perspective or an entire new baseline of clients. It may force you to move out of what you're doing right now and into a higher, more financially providing, or even a more higher dimensional or a spiritual perspective of the direction you need to go.
Okay.
Sometimes these events take place to push you into new directions. Okay. But again, even if that's not the case, the ability to not get wrapped up into anger, into grief, or into frustration, or into apathy or something like that, and move into, positions of higher acceptance and moral courage and stuff like that, says, no, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight for this. And not only am I going to fight for this, I'll band other people together that's also being affected by this. We'll create a potential class action group that can counter this. And then at that point, we're going to have to look at, is this going to be a reoccurring thing? Is somebody, you see a lot of people facing eminent domain problems under this same type of thing. And a lot of times there is a no-win scenario for them, but they can take the money that's provided for them in addition to a lawsuit if they're more into a higher element of thinking, and they can find better solutions that would then direct them into something, a new line of business, a new possibilities in some other place.
I totally agree. There's many things that you have to ask guidance on. So something that we use a lot, and then I've advised clients to use, is in your meditation, connecting with Mother Mary or with whomever you work with, and you ask to be shown the way through it. Okay. Ask for the guidance every day. How do we move through this so that everyone's needs are met and that we are able to bring light to the situation? Another thing that you can do is send from your high heart to the high heart of everyone involved, the lawyers and, the other side, whoever it is. And you send the golden ray of Christ consciousness from your high heart to their high heart, asking for everything to be resolved with ease and grace as quickly as possible. There is another thing that you can do. I mean, I have a lot of ideas because we've used them ourselves, and I advise clients to use them, family and friends, and because this is the part about being of higher consciousness. Yes, we do take the 3D positions that are available to us. You do the legal things that you need to do. Don't ignore them. But you also then take that next step to use your higher consciousness frequency to help bring it to fruition or to end as quickly as possible, with everyone's needs being met. That way, you're not gaining karma, of course, for using your abilities to slant things your way, right? But then the other thing that I would suggest to you is to take that golden ray of Christ consciousness and to surround everybody with that light, to see everybody, kind of cocooned in that light, and charge it every day, seeing that cocoon around the entire situation, asking for it to be brought to resolution as quickly as possible. Again, meeting everyone's needs and for the highest and best good of all. And those are the things that I have seen work and cut through legal red tape faster than anything else, or just waiting for the process to work itself out, right? But the love from your heart and then surrounding it, those are honestly, they work amazingly well. And I can't wait to hear, Angela, how it works out for you.
Yeah, the key is don't allow yourself to be trapped into the lower frequencies. I mean, it is so easy to go into anger in this. It's easy to go into apathy. No, there's times when you need to fight. There's times when you need to stand up for yourself. And there's times when you can use higher consciousness to actually find solutions. And that's the key for this. And again,
Let me ask
you have to be open to those solutions, because sometimes they come in such a way that they are not what you're expecting or what you want.
Right.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something, because I think it's really important. Obviously, you guys deal with a lot of people, you help a lot of people, you probably have faced very life limit situations, like life-threatening situations. You've been in really situations in which you have been, tested yourselves. My question is, as you can imagine, when this particular situation, as Angela was describing, sometimes you get just, blocked. You're shocked. You don't know what to do. And the question I wanted to ask you is, according to your experience, even if you don't know what to do, is just taking action, whatever the action it is, even if it's an imperfect action, even if I'm not able at this point in time, because I'm shocked, I'm not able to analyze, I'm not able to do anything to connect with my, with a higher level of consciousness activities, whatever that is. My question is, just taking action, according to your experience, does it already make a difference?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's really interesting, Angel, because you're asking two different people about how we handle things. So for me, and what I advise, honestly, is to step back for a moment, right? And to go into your meditation or theta brainwave state, which I teach how to do it quickly and easily. You connect through your highest self to God, and through God, I connect with Mother Mary. I feel very close to her. So that's who I work with a lot. And I ask for help. There is something that we commonly talk about, and we probably talk about it so breezily that we don't talk about it enough. And that is that you have to have the consciousness to ask for help and guidance. Our angels are there, our legions. All of us have legions of angels. There's not a number in legions, right? But we all have many legions, not just one. And our angels are there to assist us, to protect us, to help move the energy, to hold the energy. There's so much that our angels are there to do and to assist us with. So having the consciousness to call in your armies, basically, on the energetic realms to assist, to connect with the higher self of the people that are involved, asking for everybody to be filled with the golden ray of Christ consciousness. Honestly, that is, to me, that is the best thing that you can do. And then weirdly, actions will come to you about what you need to do next. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel. If we all did that, we'd have a lot less road rage, right? We'd have a lot less
Among other things.
Exactly. So it's taking that one breath and connecting. That's what I think is so important, and asking for the help from all of the deities, the celestial masters, God, everyone that is there to assist you. But they have to be basically invited. You must ask for the help.
You bring up a really good, interesting question in what you were referring to. And, it deals with actions. You have to look at manifestation itself. There are 4 stages of manifestation, okay? And whatever it may be, dealing with problems, creating something, some higher reality that you wish to see, creating a process for yourself to move through, difficult challenges or to goals. When you're dealing with that, the first thing you start with is your thoughts. And remember, your thoughts have to align with your value system, your own internal value, not some value system that you've been indoctrinated into through repetitive conditioning. We see a lot of that occurring in today's world right now, but it has to align with your highest values, okay? So your thoughts have to be directed towards first finding a solution to whatever's going on, okay? And then going into that alpha state of consciousness that we had talked about already, where you're in kind of that relaxed yet focused mindful state, and then engaging in things like affirmations or visualizations or research that is directed towards finding solutions from a higher perspective. You use your thoughts as the first stage of that manifestation. It sets the imprint from where you're going. And then you can use words or deeper visualizations. These are things that create within your own subconscious the end goal in mind. So if you're visualizing, you see the solution in place. You see it in such a place that you are living it. You use affirmations throughout your daily life to sit there and say, I am now successful in this endeavor, whatever it may be. I am a perfected healer. I am a great creator. Whatever it may be that you're saying. I'm using very general terms. Yours would be specific. All right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to accompany these with what's referred to as like walking visualizations, where throughout your day, your mind is spent focused on those solutions. So much in today's world right now is about problem identification. Oh, there's so much of we can just use all of the things that have been in the media lately. There's so much racism, sexism, xenophobia, anti-LGBTQIA plus policies, all of these different things. But what those do is those focus on the problem. They never really address solutions. So when you're going through your day using these sort of what I call micro visualizations or the walking meditative state that, the Hindus and Buddhists used to state, you are focused on those solutions. Okay. And then even more important than anything else, when you're doing those visualizations, the pure ones where you're focused, not when you're walking through your day, but the ones where you are focused, you begin to use emotions, the deepest feelings of love and connection to source that you can muster, and you feed that visualization process. And then as you get better, you begin to feed that emotion, that especially the emotion of love or the emotion of joy and things like that, into your walking meditation. So you can do that. This takes a lot of practice, folks. This is not something that you can just walk right into and like that, but it is feasible. And many people, many successful people, you read The Law of Success and other books like that, and they talk about this process. Now, in answer to your question, the final component is action. You can think of it as seeding that in the etheric. Now you are going to meet those objectives on the physical realm. You begin to walk your day in the process. You have researched the solutions. Now you begin to enact those solutions. So in the case of Angela or something like that, it would be contacting not just attorneys, but the correct attorneys, not just integrating your other neighbors or things like that to try to stop this process, but integrating them with a prepackage of knowledge of how to do it. This is the action component. This is what fuels the visualizations, what meets them halfway. This is what separates successful people from the run-of-the-mill, people that utilize visualizations to limited success. Remember, your brain, your subconscious brain, it doesn't know the difference of when you're visualizing something or you're living it. Okay. To it, it's all the experience. All right. So you're hardwiring your subconscious mind, 80-90% of your thinking or your actual processes to do that. And then again, you focus this on the higher states of consciousness. And that's how you approach every single thing. And it's doable. It's very plausible. Many people are successful from it, but you need to develop a process to enact this. And then the other key thing is you've got to actually do it. And a lot of the action states, they make people nervous. People don't want to step into that role. Sometimes it requires you to take a leadership position to do this. And a lot of people shy away from that. Well, we're not going to have much more time of shying away from a lot of these things. They're going to come into our face more and more over the next few decades. So you may as well get used to how to deal with them now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that, Angela, you definitely have got, as you were saying in your comment here, you've got lots of fabulous tips here. So thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you, Mike. And then I go back to, right now we're halfway through our show today. It's episode number 4, of the Maverick Mindset Show. And we were talking before about, we're talking today about how to transition from mass consciousness to higher consciousness. And I was asking you guys the question, why is mass consciousness typically associated with low consciousness, low level of consciousness? So the question I wanted to ask you right now is, would it be possible? What should happen so that, because mass represents like mass, right? So everybody's consciousness. So my question is, could we actually go as a group, could we go as humanity from a low level of mass consciousness to a high level of mass consciousness? What should happen in order to achieve that?
That is the goal. I mean, that is what the quote, mass ascension process or whatever term you want to use.
But how could we do that? How could we, humanity, do that? But not one by one, but massively. How could we massively?
Okay.
What should happen? Could you elaborate on that?
So here's the thing. 3D is set up at a mass consciousness frequency. That is what 3D is. And that's why most
3D,
of us...
3D is the current reality, right?
That's our current reality.
Everybody is on the same page here.
Thank you. So the matrix programming for the 3D existence is 0 to 200 on the scale of consciousness, which is all these emotive states that are low frequency. They're not promoting peace, joy, and love, right? They are promoting fight, flight, and survival, and, irritation with people, right? Where people are fighting one another for whatever it is that they need, because it's more of a survival need-based energy. Desire. Thank you. So that's what happens in the 3D. So we are awakening more and more people and getting them to understand there's way more to our existence than this need-based frequency set, right? There's more for us, and we all understand we want it, but we don't know how to get there. And that's what we're here to talk about. So the way it's been going is one by one, right? We are awakening people one by one, and everybody's having their healing journey. And, we're eventually moving up on the scale, and then we're teaching others how to do it too. And so we are still in that stage. However, we are moving and transitioning into bringing larger groups all at one time into the awakening sequence. Okay, so where they realize, they wake up and go, wait a second, what's going on here? Why does this keep happening? Why are we experiencing these things over and over? There has to be more. There has to be a reason I came here. I know there's a reason I came here. And so those people are reaching out to say, okay, so why are we here? What are we meant to be doing? And the answer, of course, is you're meant to raise your consciousness, because as we do it in this group effort, that is then how we tip the scales. It reminds me of a seesaw when you were a kid on the playground, right? So the guy who had the heavier weight always was tipped to the bottom, right? So the guy at the top would be generally the lighter kid, right? And so it was very uneven. So we have to tip the scales so that our side is more, right? We have the energy on our side, and that then more people can make that same traverse and come to the higher frequency easier. But we need more people to do it. We need the mass consciousness to shift to higher frequency.
Yeah. But, okay. So before you continue, maybe you can answer this question. Like, okay, so you're talking about we have to tip, right? We have to get to the tipping point.
Right.
But we are, let's say, there are, if we believe the numbers, right? There are 8 billion beings incarnated right now in this plane called Earth, okay? In this
right.
Earthship, as someone call it. Is there a critical mass? Is there a number of people that should actually transition at the unison at the same time to higher consciousness, so that the mass consciousness would be not a low level, but a high level of consciousness? Do I make myself clear?
Yeah. You're talking about something like the 144,000 or whatnot. Some people say it's 1 to 2 billion.
What do you think? What do you think? Is there such a critical number?
I think there is, but before you even go into that, you have to understand another element of it as well, because it's not as simple as that. First of all, this is a 3D world. However you want to look at it, a simulacrum, a copy world, a 5D original world with a 3D overlay, a 3D world going through its normal, processes to move up into a 4 or 5D, however you want, and I mean densities, not dimensions in this case, however you want to look at it, you have to remember that in this process, you may have 8 billion souls. You may have half of those that want to be in this simulation or this reality. This is part of their growth process. So you're not, if you're going to throw them up, it's like playing a video game in a way. If you're going to just throw somebody up to level 100, the top level that they could be at, and they really want to play, they're at level 25 and they want to play up, from 25 to 75. And you're all of a sudden saying, sorry, I know you paid for this video game, but we're just tossing you up there because we all want to go there. Maybe that's not so much fairness to them. So let's aside for the fact that maybe that's not the condition and everybody came here to ride this big wave and they want to move forward. You have another element that you have to look at. And that is you've got that other side of the duality equation. You have the dark element. They too want to harvest a group. They don't want to harvest people into a higher density 5D reality. They want to harvest people into a higher density 3D or darker 4D reality. And they want to keep a large percentage of those people in a 3D mass consciousness at those lower levels, at fear and below. Why? Because when they're in those lower consciousness elements, the energy component that they give out, the luge, whatever you want to call it, is a energy source for them to advance on. They've cut themselves off from source. This is how they grow, evolve, and they go through their,
it's
growth
food.
patterns. Yeah, I didn't want to use that term, but that's pretty accurate. So the ones that do acquiesce to their contracts and move in, they'll be given, the great gifts, the transhumanism. They're the superheroes of the future, whatever you want to be, the Borg, for lack of a better word, or whatever the dark side intends for them. They wish to harvest a considerable amount because their goal is always to hold everybody back or to create their armies that will fight against the heavens. It's pretty simple. There's a movie Nefarious that we were watching the other day that talked about demons and demonology and stuff. And they laid it right out. And this is nothing new. You can go back into Sumerian texts and Akkadian, all of this stuff, and you can find out what the end goal of these demons are for humanity, which, by the way, they do not like humanity or any corporeal life for the most part. As a matter of fact, they pretty much hate it. Their goal is to subjugate it and twist its creation in an attack against God, for lack of a better word, or source. So they have that element that they want to do.
When you were talking
I want to get to your question though. So
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so when you're accounting for both of these, what you really are doing now is you are saying that group of people that group of souls that are incarnating now that want to move into a higher state of reality, whatever that number may be. So with them, you've got to begin a sort of process. And a lot of the great teachers have taught us these processes. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all of them. They came in and they showed us how to do it. And it's basically to become more loving, more in tune with the qualities of the higher realities of the 5D or higher world, 5-density world. And these are the moral courage, the true courage and inner morality that we have. It's the non-detachment component where you're not locked in. It is the willingness and the acceptance of higher principles. It is the higher reasoning capabilities, the love, the joy, all of these things, enlightenment, whatever they may be. But there is a price for that. The dark offers their stuff willingly at whatever stage you are in. They'll take you on board. The side of light, it requires you to return to a more pristine state of existence. That means you have to give up a little bit of that ego and will, which is the last component of mass consciousness, in service to God or higher will.
Divine
and
will.
That, for some people, represents a loss of control. For demons, it represents enslavement. We are beings that were bestowed, a divine sense of self-worth and existence. And we have a predetermined will that we could exercise. To tell us we have to follow God's will is an act of, for them, enslavement. That is not what the reality of it is, though. When you follow this higher will, when you are able to move into that parameter, you find true freedom. You find true acceptance. You operate within the laws and the parameters established for us to exist within for our greatest evolutionary potential. In the other component, you're just doing whatever some other being that never reaches that level of existence does.
Okay, to sum up though, there is a critical mass, but nobody knows really what it is. We only know that we are getting closer.
2,147,136.
Okay.
It's as good a number as any. I mean,
we're getting closer to the fact that we are needing that number to awaken and to be pooling our energy together. And the more that we do this and practice this pooling of energy, just like Angela's talking about with her community, bringing our energy together and shifting things. So that's, Michael and I belong to other groups where we use our combined energy to send it, to use it to create a shift somewhere or in something, and then keep doing it until we see the change, which is why, explaining to Angela and to the community here at large how to do it, you gather people together, because the more of us that are together doing the same thing, we actually see results in this 3D environment.
Yeah, our mastermind groups that we wanted to create are simple. You start with anywhere from 6 to 12 people, and you begin to work on their healing processes, their purification, their increases in consciousness, and you train them to become the next group of leaders. Those leaders get sent out. I mean, this is what Jesus did with his apostles. They then go out and they train another 6 to 12 people. And this begins to exponentially grow. And at the same time, all of those leaders stay networked within the groups, all connected with higher purpose and higher source. The key, though, is you don't allow everybody to go off and go willy-nilly doing every little thing. This is not about herding chickens. It's about keeping everybody in a cohesive environment, locked into purpose-directed visualizations, activations, raising people's consciousness on a greater level. And these groups begin to grow. And at the same time, these groups also begin to present to people what the side of light has to offer. The side of dark has been presenting that pretty accurately right now.
I wanted actually to talk exactly about this, because obviously, very often throughout our interviews, it's episode number 4 right now of the Maverick Mindset Show. And if the name or if the word science, had still some prestige in our society after what has happened in the last 3 years,
right,
I would definitely say that you guys are absolutely one of the most relevant spiritual scientists I've ever met in my entire life. That's why I love so much our conversations. And let me ask you a question, because when you get into the dark side, you start talking about harvesting, but you never talk about harvesting when you're in the light side, right? In the bright side.
Well, so there's a difference. Harvesting to enslave.
I know there's a difference. But let me ask you a question, because again, because you are you are magicians with the words that you use, but I want the audience to know exactly why you use the words that you use. Are we, let's say the ones that are in transition or transitioning to the higher levels of consciousness, or even the ones that are at higher levels of consciousness, we talk about, unconditional love, loving, etc. Do we also harvest something from the others? Or it's a completely different process? I'm talking about the process itself of raising, the consciousness in that transition.
Okay.
The side of light wants every soul, every incarnation to evolve at the level that is determined best for them. Okay. They want to bring about, and when I talk about harvest for them, I mean that the side of light wants to, not necessarily separate completely the wheat from the chaff. That is a process that will occur. But they want to take that wheat and develop it and then plant it into a new, more fertile soil. So what they're doing is they want those souls that are willing to move up. And many souls have come to this time period right now. This is one of these critical kind of nodal points where, you're transitioning in, what was that old song, The Age of Aquarius or something like that. There is an opportunity to go into a higher scale of consciousness at a mass level. And what they want to do is they want to bring everybody into that position so that this next world is more conducive to their evolutionary process, which is an ongoing thing. Everybody uses words ascension. Ascension is a ongoing process. Okay. You're not in the 5D before, you're thinking, okay, how do I work my way up a few octaves in the 5D into the higher realm and then maybe go into the 6 or 6, it can take tons of existences to do, but we have all of the time in the world to do it at a higher self element or at a more advanced element of our souls.
Okay. So harvesting, when we talk about it with relation to the side of dark, let's just say, it's because they are stunted. I mean, they are truly used to, one thing Michael talks about all the time is he goes, the reason they're so successful on the side of dark is because they are given orders and every single one of them has to follow it. There is no choice. So while they may feel like they would be enslaved by following God's divine will, the truth is they're enslaved. Period. Right. Through their own hierarchy. And they have no problem sending them back to, lower realms if they're not following orders. So when they harvest, they basically enslave you for your existence, your soul's existence, which, that's quite a penalty. Whereas the side of light is about freeing your soul from your karma and from the aspects of self that have brought you to, some difficulty in your experiences throughout your existences, and showing you that by fully connecting with God through your high heart, that this is where your freedom and your joy and your peace, that's where it is. That's where it lies. And so in that, you are free and you are happy to spread joy, peace, and love, right? This is what we aim to do and to be able to create through that energy and manifest through that energy. And unfortunately, you mentioned earlier, Angel, how, the word science has become basically bastardized, right? Nobody believes the definition of what that is because of how it's been used and exploited and manipulated. And the same has been done for manifestation and creation. And people were basically promised out there in the broad scheme of things that they could do insta manifestation and insta creation. And that's the side of dark. Okay, it just is. That is the side that is promising you all these amazing glamour and money and the love of your life and all these things. Again, we're back to that need, desire, which is still of low frequency. And manifestation and creation at that level is not sustainable, which is what Michael was talking about earlier. You need to be in these higher frequencies in order for the sustainability to continue, right? For us to continue to be able to stay at that high frequency and to bring to us those experiences which promote the willingness and acceptance and reason and love and peace and joy, which are all the frequencies in higher consciousness. So for all of what we're talking about, the side of light is harder, right? It's harder for us to cross over that line from 3D mass consciousness to what is considered a 5D and above consciousness. But it is well worth the effort.
Yeah, once you surrender some of that ego, it becomes far easier. Once you begin to connect in, even if it's connecting into the higher elements of your subconscious, your unconscious mind, or better still, connecting up into some element of source, it becomes easier. But it does require a bit of surrendering. But then you find more peace and happiness in that. Here's something that's interesting. You have to remember, this world is essentially controlled by that dark element. It's, yes, God in truth, is everything. So that goes without saying. But when these beings fell, they fell into the plane above this reality. Okay, and they, that's why when Satan offered Jesus, all of the power and all of the control of this world, and of course he rejected it. It was because it was of his control to give it. It was not because he was just making some false statement up, which for Satan is usually a rarity because he is the father of all lies in every condition. Now, here's something about what we talk about with this harvest. And I don't mean to use a very flippant thing, but folks, it's time to move beyond the third grade. And now there's an opportunity to move into the skip a grade and jump into the fifth. Right. Okay, it's for many people it is time. Now, if you just happen to come into the third grade, no, you want to experience the third grade, or you want to play the video game associated with this, or whatever it is. And when I mean video game, I mean an extremely advanced thing. Imagine something like 1 million years from now we would create for our own type of entertainment. This goes into the simulacrum theories. So for everyone else, though, unless your goal is to go 4D dark, and for some people that is their intention, for everybody else, there is a wonderful opportunity to jump up an octave or two. Right. And that's what this opportunity is. And there's a window that's in place, and it's in place for maybe a few more decades. So everybody's really got to kind of step up to the program. And a lot of the quote light workers, spiritual, people looking for an ascension path, whatever term you want to associate it with, for them, they're going to need to start stepping into some of these leadership roles. And it's going to be uncomfortable for many. It's uncomfortable for me. I'm not looking to get out and speak out and do things like that. But it still has to be done. So we need to begin to band more together to create more and more of this mass consciousness. As we all begin to do this, the next reality, create heaven on earth. Remember, the kingdom of God is within us. Now we need to bring that forth and begin to create it, or at least enhance the consciousness of as many people as possible that are willing to accept it. And it's quite a gift to move forward, to move up the octaves.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're reaching the end of the show today. We're talking about transitioning from mass consciousness to higher level of consciousness, and we've been talking about so many different things today. I really like it when we get down to specific recipes, specific stages and steps that we can take. Thank you so much. Again, this was episode number 4 of the Maverick Mindset Show. I would like to remind everybody that if you would like to know more about what Michael and Gabrielle do every single day, definitely reach out to them. You can go to their website, which is GabrielleSpencer.com. You can send an email to info, INF as in Frank O, at GabrielleSpencer.com. If I'm mistaken, please, Michael or Gabrielle, correct me.
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. And definitely, I obviously wanted to thank Michael and Gabrielle for being so precise, for being willing to answer the questions from the audience. Thank you so much to the audience for the questions and the comments we had today. We are here for you. And we appreciate very much when you're here and you want to know more. And, Michael and Gabrielle, as you know, they have big hearts, very loving, very caring, and they willingly and gladly will answer all of your questions. Come here again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, US. We'll be here again. It will be episode number 5. And again, I'm sure that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as we have here at XPNsion Network. Again, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gabrielle. It's been a pleasure. See you next week. And to everybody else, we love you. See you soon. Keep on increasing and raising your energy, your consciousness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That good?